Brighton Rock, Part 3, Chapter 3. The poison twisted in the boy's veins. He had been insulted. He had to show someone he was a man. He went scowling into Snow's, young, shabby, and untrustworthy, and the waitresses with one accord turned their backs. He stood there looking for a table. The place was full, and no one attended to him. It was as if they doubted whether he had the money to pay for his meal. He thought of Corleone padding through the enormous rooms, the embroidered crowns on the chairbacks. He suddenly shouted aloud, "I want service!" and the pulse beat in his cheek. All the faces round him shivered into motion, and then were still again like water. Everyone looked away. He was ignored. Suddenly, a sense of weariness overtook him. He felt as if he had traveled a great many miles to be ignored like this. A voice said, "There isn't a table." They were still such strangers that he didn't recognize the voice until it added, "Pinky." He looked around, and there was Rose, dressed to go out in a shabby black straw which made her face look as if it looked as it would look in 20 years' time, after work and the childbearing. "They gotta serve me," the boy said. "Who do they think they are?" "There isn't a table." Everyone was watching them now, with disapproval. "Come outside, Pinky. What are you all dressed up for?" "It's my afternoon off. Come outside." He followed her, and suddenly, taking her wrist, he brought the poison out to his lips. "I could break your arm." "What have I done, Pinky?" "No table. They don't like serving me in there. I'm no class. They'll see one day." "What?" But his face staggered before the extent of his ambitions. He said, "Never mind. They'll learn." "Did you get the message, Pinky?" "What message?" "I phoned you at Frank's. I told him to tell you." "Told who?" "I don't know," she added casually. "I think it was the man who left the ticket." He gripped her wrist again. He said, "The man who left the ticket's dead. You read it all right." But she showed no sign of fear this time. He'd been too friendly. She ignored his reminder. "Did he find you?" she asked, and he thought to himself, "She's got to be scared again." "No one found me," he said. He pushed her roughly forward. "Come on, we'll walk. I'll take you out." "I was going home." "You won't go home. You'll come with me. I want exercise," he said, looking down at his pointed shoes, which had never walked further than the length of the parade. "Where'll we go, Pinky?" "Somewhere," Pinky said. "Out in the country. That's where you go on a day like this." He tried to think for a moment of where the country was. The race course. That was country. And then a bus came by marked Peacehaven, and he waved his hand to it. "There you are," he said. "That's country. We can talk there. There's things we gotta get straight." "I thought we were going to walk." "This is walking," he said roughly, pushing her up the steps. "You're green. You don't know a thing. You don't know people. You don't think people really walk." "Why, it's miles." "When people say come for a walk, they mean by a bus?" "Or a car. I'd have taken you in the car, but the mob are out in it." "You got a car?" "I couldn't get on without a car," the boy said, as the bus climbed up behind Rottingdam. Red brick buildings behind a wall, great stretch of parkland, one girl with a hockey stick staring at something in the sky, with cropped expensive turfs all around her. The poison drained back into its proper glands. He was admired. No one insulted him. But when he looked at the girl who admired him, the poison oozed out again. He said, "Take off that hat. You look awful." She obeyed. Her mousy hair lay flat on the small scalp. He watched her with distaste. That was what they joked about him marrying. That. He watched her with his sour virginity, as one might watch a draught of medicine offered that one could never take. Never take. One would die first, or let others die. The chalky dust blew up around the windows. "He told me to ring up," Rose said. "So when—" "Not here," the boy said. "Wait till we're alone." The driver's head rose slowly against a waste of sky, a few white feathers blown backward into the blue. They were on top of the downs and turned eastwards. The boy sat with his pointed shoes side by side, his hands in his pockets, feeling the throb of the engine come up through the thin soles. "It's lovely," Rose said, "being out here in the country with you." Little tarred bungalows with tin roofs paraded backwards, gardens stretched in the chalk, dry flower beds like Saxon, emblems graved on the downs. Notices read, "Pull in here. Mazawattee tea. Genuine antiques," and hundreds of feet below the pale green sea washed into the scarred and shabby side of England. Peacehaven itself dwindled outside against the downs. Half-made streets turned into grass tracks. They walked down between the bungalows to the cliff's edge. There was nobody about. One of the bungalows had broken windows. In another, the blinds were down for death. "It makes me giddy," said Rose, looking down. It was clearly closing, and the store was shut. Closing time, and no drinks obtainable at the hotel. A vista to let boards running back along the chalky ruts of unfinished roads. The boy could see over her shoulder the rough drop to the shingle. "It makes me feel I'll fall," Rose said, turning from the sea. He let her turn. No need to act prematurely. The draft might never be offered. "Tell me," he said. "Now, who rang up who, and why?" "I rang up you, but you weren't in." "He answered." "He," the boy repeated. "The one who left the ticket the day you came in. You remember, you were looking for something." He remembered all right, the hand of the cloth, the stupid, innocent face he had expected would so easily forget. "You remember a lot," he said, frowning at the thought. "I wouldn't forget that day," she said abruptly and stopped. "You forget a lot, too. I just told you that wasn't the man you heard speak. That man's dead." "It doesn't matter anyway," she said. "What matters is someone was asking questions." "About the ticket?" "Yes, a man, a woman, a big one with a laugh. You should have heard that laugh, just as if she'd never had a care. I didn't trust her. She wasn't our kind." "Our kind?" He frowned again against the shallow wrinkled tide of the suggestion that they had something in common, and spoke sharply. "What did she want?" "She wanted to know everything. What the man who left the cart looked like." "What did you tell her?" "I didn't tell her a thing, Pinky." The boy dug with his pointed shoe into the thin, dry turf and sent an empty corned beef tin rattling down the ruts. "It's only you I'm thinking of," he said. "It don't matter to me. I'm not concerned. But I wouldn't want you getting mixed up into things that might be dangerous." He looked quickly up at her sideways. "You don't seem scared. It's serious what I'm telling you." "I wouldn't be scared, Pinky. Not with you about." He dug his nails into her hands with vexation. She remembered everything she ought to forget, and forgot all that she should remember. The vitriol bottle. He'd scared her all right then. He'd been too friendly since. She really believed that he was fond of her. Why, this, he supposed, was walking out, and he thought again of Spicer's joke. He looked at the mousy skull, the bony body, the shabby dress, and shuddered involuntarily, a goose falling across the final bed. Saturday, he thought. Today's Saturday, remembering the room at home, the frightening weekly exercise of his parents which he watched from his single bed. That was what they expected of you. Every polony you had ever had your eye on. The bed, his virginity straightened in him like sex. That was how they judged you. Not by whether you had the guts to kill a man, to run a mob, to conquer Corleone. He said, "We don't want to stay around here. We'll be getting back." "We have only just come," the girl said. "Let's stay a bit, Pinky. I like the country," she said. "You've had a look," he said. "You can't do anything with the country. The pub's closed. We could just sit. We've got to wait for the bus anyway." "You're funny. You aren't scared of anything, are you?" He laughed queerly, sitting awkwardly down in front of the bungalow with the shattered glass. "Me? Scared? That's funny." He lay back against the bank, his waistcoat undone, his thin frayed tie bright and striped against the chalk. "This is better than going home," Rose said. "Where's home?" "Nelson Place. Do you know it?" "Oh, I've passed through," he said airily, but he could have drawn its plan as accurately as a surveyor on the turf. The barred and battlement Salvation Army gaff at the corner, his own home beyond in Paradise Peace, the houses which looked as if they had passed through an intensive bombardment, flapping gutters and glassless windows, an iron bedstead resting in a front garden, the smashed and wasted ground in front where houses had been pulled down were model flats which had never gone up. They lay on the chalk bank by the side with a common geography, and a little hate mixed with his contempt. He thought he had made his escape, and here was his home, back beside him, making claims. Rose said suddenly, "She's never lived here." "Who?" "That woman, asking questions, never a care." "Well," he said, "we can't all have been born in Nelson Place. You weren't born there, or somewhere around." "Me? Of course not. What do you think?" "I thought maybe you were. You're a Roman too. We were all Romans in Nelson Place. You believe in things like hell, but you can't see what you don't believe in," she said bitterly. "You can tell the world's all dandy with her." He defended himself from any connection with Paradise Peace. I don't take stock in any religion. Hell, it's just there. You don't need to think of it, not before you die. You might die sudden. He closed his eyes under the bright empty arch, and a memory floated up imperfectly into speech. You know what they say, between the stirrup and the ground, he something sought and something found. Mercy. That's right, mercy. It would be awful, though, she said suddenly, if they didn't give you time. She turned her cheek onto the chalk towards him, and added, as if he could help her, That's what I always pray, that I won't die sudden. What do you pray? I don't, he said, but he was praying, even while he spoke to something or someone, that he wouldn't need to carry on any further with her, get mixed up again and with that drab dynamite plot of ground they both called home. You angry about anything? Rose asked. A man wants to be quiet sometimes, he said, lying rigidly against the chalk bank, giving nothing away. In the silence, a shutter flapped and the tide lisped. Two people walking out, that's what they were, and the memory of Culleone's luxury with the crowned chairs at the Cosmopolitan came back to taunt him. He said, Talk, can't you? Say something. You wanted to be quiet, she retorted with a sudden anger, which took him by surprise. He hadn't thought her capable of that. If I don't suit you, she said, you can leave me alone. I didn't ask to come out. She sat with her hands around her knees, and her cheeks burned on the tip of the bone. Anger was as good as rouge on that thin face. If I'm not grand enough for you, your car and all. Who said? Oh, she said, I'm not that dumb. I've seen you looking at me in my hat. It occurred to him suddenly that she might even get up and leave him, go back to Snow's with her secret for the first corner who questioned her kindly. He had to conciliate her. They were walking out. He'd got to do the things expected of him. He put out his hand with repulsion. It lay like a cold paddock on her knee. You took me wrong, he said. You're a sweet girl. I've been worried, that's all. Business worries. You and me, he swallowed painfully. We suit each other, down to the ground. He saw the color go, the face turned to him with a blind willingness to be deceived, saw the lips waiting. He drew her hand up quickly and put his mouth against her fingers. Anything was better than the lips. The fingers were rough on his skin and tasted a little of soap. She said, Pinky, I'm sorry. You're sweet to me. He laughed nervously. You and me, and heard the hoot of a bus and the joy of a besieged man listening to the bold bugles of the relieving force. There, he said, the bus. Let's be going. I'm not much of one for the country. A city bird, you too. She got up, and he saw the skin of her thigh for a moment above the artificial silk, and a prick of sexual desire disturbed him like a sickness. That was what happened to a man in the inn. The stuffy room, the wakeful children, the Saturday night movements from the other bed. Was there no escape anywhere for anyone? It was worth murdering a world. It's beautiful here all the same, she said, staring up at the chalky ruts between toilet boards, and the boy laughed again at the fine word people gave to a dirty act. Love, beauty. All his pride coiled like a watch spring around the thought that he wasn't deceived, that he wasn't going to give himself up to marriage and the birth of children. He was going to be where Culleone now was, and higher. He knew everything, and watched every detail of the act of sex. You couldn't deceive him with lovely words. There was nothing to be excited about, no gain to recompense you for what you lost. But when Rose turned to him again with the expectation of a kiss, he was all aware of the same horrifying ignorance. His mouth missed, and hers recoiled. He'd never kissed a girl. She said, I'm sorry, I'm stupid, I never had, and suddenly broke off to watch a gull rise from one of the little parched gardens and drop over the cliff towards the sea. He didn't speak to her in the bus, sullen and ill at ease, sitting with his hands in his pockets, his feet close together, not knowing why he'd come this far out with her, only to go back again with nothing settled. The secret, the memory, still lodged securely in her skull. The country unwound the other way. Mazzawati tea, the antique dealers, pull-ins, the thin grass pettering out on the first asphalt. From the pier, the brightened anglers flung their floats. A little music ground mournfully out into the windy sunlight. As they walked on the sunny side, past a night of love for men only, the fan dancer, Rose asked, Is business bad? There's always worries, the boy said. I wish I could help, be of use. He said nothing, walking on. She put out a hand towards the thin, rigid figure, seeing the smooth cheek, the fluff of hair at the nape, You're so young, Pinky, to get worries. She put her hand through his arm. We're both young, Pinky, and felt his body stonily withdraw. A photographer said, Snap you together against the sea, raising the cap of his camera, and the boy flung up his hand before his face and went on. Don't you like being snapped, Pinky? We might have had our pictures stuck up for people to see. It wouldn't have cost anything. I don't mind what things cost, the boy said, rattling his pockets, showing how much cash he had. We might have been stuck up there, Rose said, halting at the photographer's kiosk with the photographs of the bathing belles and the famous comedians and anonymous couples. Next, and exclaimed with surprise, Why, there he is! The boy was staring over the side where the green tide sucked and slid like a wet moth around the piles. He turned unwillingly to look, and there was Spicer, fixed in the photographer's window for the world to gaze at, striding out of the sunlight into the shadow under the pier, worried and haunted and in haste. A comic figure at which strangers could laugh and say, He's worried right enough. They caught him unawares. The one who left the card, Rose said. The one you said was dead. He's not dead. Though it almost looks, she laughed with amusement at the blurred black and white haste, that he's afraid he will be if he doesn't hurry. An old picture, the boy said. Oh, no, it's not. This is where today's pictures go, for you to buy. You know a lot. You can't miss it, can you? Rose said. It's comic, striding along, all fussed up, not even seeing the camera. Stay here, the boy said. Inside the kiosk, it was dark after the sun. A man with a thin mustache and steel-rimmed spectacles sorted piles of prints. I want a picture that's up outside, the boy said. Slip, please, the man said, and put out yellow fingers which smelt faintly of hypo. I haven't got a slip. Well, you can't have the picture without a slip, the man said, and held a negative up to the electric globe. What right have you, the boy said, to stick up pictures without by your leave? You let me have that picture. But the steel rims glittered back at him without interest. A fractious boy. You bring that slip, the man said, and you can have the picture. Now run along, I'm busy. Behind his head were framed snapshots of King Edward the Eighth, Prince of Wales, and a yachting cap, and a background of peat machines, going yellow from inferior chemicals and age, Vesta Tilley signing autographs, Henry Irving muffled against the Channel winds, A Nation's History, Lily Langtry wore ostrich feathers, Miss Parkhurst hobble skirts, the English beauty queen of 1923 a bathing dress. It was of little comfort to know that Spicer was among the immortals. Chapter 4. Spicer, the boy called. Spicer! He climbed up from Frank's small dark hall towards the landing, leaving a smear of country of the downs white on the linoleum. Spicer! He felt the broken banister tremble underneath his hand. He opened the door in Spicer's room, and there he was upon the bed, asleep, face down. The window was closed, an insect buzzed through the stale air, and there was a smell of whiskey from the bed. Pinky stood, looking down on the graying hair. He felt no pity at all. He wasn't old enough for pity. He pulled Spicer round. The skin round his mouth was an eruption. Spicer! Spicer opened his eyes. He saw nothing for a while in the dim room. I want a word with you, Spicer. Spicer sat up. My God, Pinky, I'm glad to see you. Always glad to see a pal, eh, Spicer? I saw a crab. He said you were at the police station. Crab? You weren't at the station then? I was having a friendly talk about Brewer. Not about Brewer, the boy said suddenly, put his hand on Spicer's wrist. Your nerves are all wrong, Spicer. You want a holiday. He sniffed with contempt the tainted air. You drink too much. He went to the window, threw it open on the vista gray of the wall. A leather jacket buzzed by the pane, and the boy caught in it his hand. It vibrated like a tiny watch spring in his palm. He began to pull off the legs of the wings one by one. She loves me, he said. She loves me not. I've been out with my girl, Spicer. The one from Snow's. The boy turned the denuded body over her palm and puffed it away over Spicer's bed. You know who I mean, he said. You had a message for me, Spicer. Why didn't you bring it? I couldn't find you, Pinky. Honest, I couldn't. And anyways, it wasn't that important. Some old busybody asking questions. It scared you all the same, the boy said. He sat down on the hard deal chair before the mirror, his hands on his knees, watching Spicer, pulse beating his cheek. Oh, it didn't scare me, Spicer said. You went walking blind straight to there. What do you mean, there? There's only one there to you, Spicer. You think about it and you dream about it. You're too old for this life. This life? Spicer said, glaring back at him from the bed. This racket, of course I mean. You get nervous, and then you get then you get rash. First there was a Carden's nose, and now you let your picture be stuck up for the pier for anyone to see. For Rose to see. Honest to God, Pinky, I never knew that. You forget to walk on your toes. She's safe. She's stuck on you, Pinky. I don't know anything about women. I leave that to you and Cubit and the rest. I only know what you tell me. You told me time and time again there never was a safe Poloni yet. That's just talk. You mean I'm a kid and you tell me good night stories? But I got so I believe 'em, Spicer. It don't seem safe to me that you and Rose are in the same town. Apart from the other Bureau asking questions, you'll have to disappear, Spicer. What do you mean? Spicer said. Disappear. He fumbled inside his jacket, and the boy watched him, his hands flat on his knees. You wouldn't do anything, he said, fumbling in his pocket. Why? The boy said. What do you think I mean? I mean, take a holiday. Go somewhere for a while. Spicer's hand came out of his pocket. He held out a silver watch toward the boy. You can trust me, Pinky. Look there. What the boys gave me. Read the inscription. 10 years a pal. From the boys at the stadium. I don't let people down. That was 15 years ago, Pinky. 25 years on the tracks. You weren't born when I started. You need a holiday, the boy said. That's all I said. I'd be glad to take a holiday, Spicer said, but I wouldn't want you to think I'm milky. I'll go at once. I'll pack a bag and clear out tonight. Why, I'd be glad to be gone. No, the boy said, staring down at his shoes. That's not all hurry. He lifted a foot. The sole was worn through with a piece of size of a shilling. He thought again of the crowns on Colleone's chairs at the Cosmopolitan. I'll need you at the races, he smiled across the room. A pal I can trust. You can trust me, Pinky. Spicer's fingers smoothed the silver watch. What are you smiling at? Have I got a smut or something? I was thinking of the races, the boy said. They mean a lot to me. He got up and stood with his back to the graying light, the tenement wall, a smut-smeared pane, looking down at Spicer with a kind of curiosity. And where will you go, Spicer? He said. His mind was made quite up. And for the second time in a few weeks he was looking at a dying man. He couldn't help feeling inquisitive. Why, it was even possible old Spicer was not set for the flames. He had been a loyal old geezer. He hadn't done as much harm as the next man. He might slip through the gates into... But the boy couldn't picture an eternity except in terms of pain. He frowned a little in the effort. A glassy sea, a golden crown, old Spicer. Nottingham, Spicer said. A pal of mine keeps the Blue Anchor in Union Street. A free house, high class, lunches served. He often said to me, Spicer, why don't you come into partnership? We'd make the old place into a hotel with a few more knickers in the till. If it wasn't for you and the boys, Spicer said, I wouldn't want to come back. I wouldn't mind staying away forever. Well, the boy said, it'll be off. We know where we are now, anyway. Spicer lay back on the pillow and put up a foot with the shooting corn. There was a hole in his woolen stocking, and a big toe showed through the hard skin calcined with middle age. Sleep well, the boy said. He went downstairs. The front door faced east, and the hall was dark. He switched on the light by the telephone, and then switched it on again. He didn't know why. Then he rang up the Cosmopolitan. When the Hotel Exchange answered, he could hear the dance music in the distance, all the way from the Palm House. Des Distances, 3 shillings, behind the Louise Set's lounge. I want Mr. Colleone. The nightingale singing, the postman ringing, the tune was abruptly cut off, and a low voice purred on the line. That Mr. Colleone? He could hear a glass chink and ice move in a shaker. He said, This is Mr. P. Brown. I've been thinking things over, Mr. Colleone. Outside the dark Linoleum Hall, a bus slid by, the lights faint in the gray end of the day. The boy put his mouth close to the mouth of the telephone and said, He won't listen to reason, Mr. Colleone. The voice purred happily back at him. The boy explained slowly and carefully. I'll wish him good luck and pat him on the back. He stopped and asked sharply, What's that you say, Mr. Colleone? No, I just thought you laughed. Hello, hello. He banged the receiver down and turned with a sense of uneasiness towards the stairs. The gold cigar lighter, the gray double-breasted waistcoat, the feeling of a racket luxuriously successful for a moment dominated him. The brass bedstead upstairs, the little pot of violet ink on the washstand, the flakes of sausage roll. His board school cunning wilted for a while. Then he turned on the light, and he was home. He climbed the stairs, humming softly, the nightingale singing, the postman ringing. but as his thoughts circled closer to the dark, dangerous, and deathy center, the tune changed. Agnus Dei, qui tollis peccata mundi. He walked stiffly, the jacket sagging across his immature shoulders, but when he opened the door to his room, Dona Novus Pacem, his pallid face peered dimly back at him, full of pride, from the mirror over the ewer, the soap dish, the basin of stale water.